10. D'Angelo and Wayne Mitchell. During a traffic stop for a broken headlight in North Charleston, South Carolina in 2011, police put brothers Wayne and D'Angelo Mitchell in the back of a squad car while they searched their vehicle. The cruiser's dashcam captured footage of D'Angelo, who was 23 at the time, telling 20-year-old Wayne that he couldn't afford to catch another charge or he'd do life in prison. He persuaded his brother to eat an ounce of cocaine that he had in his possession. Wayne removed the bag from his buttocks and handed it to D'Angelo, who went ahead and ate the drugs. A few minutes later, D'Angelo began to show clear signs of medical emergency. As he struggled to breathe and hold his head up, Wayne screamed at him. He died at a hospital. Authorities charged D'Angelo with involuntary manslaughter. He pleaded guilty and received a 15-year prison sentence, along with a 5-year sentence for a possession with intent to distribute charge. 9. Jeffrey Manchester. Serial fast food burglar Jeffrey Manchester was 4 years into a 45-year sentence for robbery when he escaped from a North Carolina prison in 2005. He made a stealthy getaway by clinging to the undercarriage of a truck. Authorities searched for Manchester for 6 months, unaware that he was spending his days as a church volunteer in Charlotte. He had a girlfriend and was known for his generosity, especially when it came to bringing toys for the children of the congregation. Everyone believed he had a government job. After all, they had no reason not to believe it. Little did they know, Manchester was spending his nights hiding out in a local Toys R Us store, and all the toys he was giving away were stolen. He exercised using these stores' bikes, passed the time by playing with his remote-controlled cars, helped himself to the baby food, and slept in a cubicle in the bicycle station. When the store attracted heavy traffic during the holiday season, he hid in a passageway leading into an abandoned Circuit City next door. Manchester's secret living arrangement fell apart after 6 months when he tried to rob the store during business hours one day, but fled the scene when he saw 2 employees slip out of the store. The clues he left behind in his makeshift living space helped investigators identify him as the thief. Members of his church recognized him in photos released to the public, and his girlfriend, Leigh Wainscott, was shocked when she learned that he was a wanted fugitive. In fact, she refused to believe law enforcement until they showed her evidence of who Manchester really was. Wainscott cooperated with police and invited the wanted convict over to her house, where officers were waiting to take him into custody. He remains in prison for now, but could see freedom as early as sometime during the 2030s. 8. Antoinetta Robles Seoda. 25-year-old Antoinetta Robles Seoda went to visit her boyfriend at a prison in Venezuela and landed on the wrong side of the law herself in 2017. She took her 6-year-old daughter into the facility, hoping that they'd leave with Ibrahim Jose Vargas Garcia in tow, literally. During the visit, Garcia curled up inside a pink suitcase with plans for Seoda to wheel him out, hoping nobody would notice. But prison staff members noticed Seoda struggling to pull the luggage and inspected it. They found Garcia crammed inside, along with several of the couple's daughter's toys. The family's attempt to cut Garcia's 9-year sentence short failed. He was thrown back in prison and Seoda was arrested. Their daughter was taken into the state's care while Seoda worked out her legal issues. 7. Graham Potter. Graham Potter's life of crime began in the early 80s when he murdered a young woman. He received a life sentence but was released after 15 years. In 2010, he was charged in Victoria with trafficking hundreds of millions of dollars worth of drugs, along with conspiracy to commit murder. Instead of answering to the charges, Potter skipped court and went on the run. Over the following years, there were numerous reported sightings of the fleeing felon, but the trail dried up, and law enforcement offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to Potter's capture, making him Australia's most wanted fugitive. In 2022, authorities received a tip claiming that he was thousands of miles away in the far north of Queensland. They found Potter hiding in an abandoned house with an array of items he could have used to change his appearance, including hair dye. He was discovered barefoot in a derelict room surrounded by wire animal cages and cardboard boxes. The 64-year-old was extradited back to Victoria to face the charges he was running from. Inspector Kevin Gowan told the press that investigators believe Potter spent most of his 12 years on the run in the area near the house, and that they suspect people helped him evade the law. A neighbor reported seeing him running around in the backyard naked and said that Potter was bound to eventually get caught, but it's clear that hiding out in a rural small town worked out for him for quite some time. 6. Jaime Monteze Howell. Police in Leesburg, Virginia received an unusual tip in late 2022 containing the whereabouts of 28-year-old Jaime Monteze Howell, who was wanted for battery. Officers got in touch with the homeowner where Howell was supposedly staying, and the resident told them that his daughter was seeing Howell and sneaking him in and out of the house. Suspecting that his daughter was hiding a man in the home at that very moment, the resident let the officers come inside to look around. They noticed that the woman's bedroom window was ajar. The daughter told the police she was alone. When she stepped away from a small closet she was standing in front of, which appeared to contain blankets and clothing, an officer noticed a man's head. He immediately recognized the man as Howell based on his distinctive face tattoo. Howell was taken into custody for the charge he was wanted for and was slapped with several additional charges for having large amounts of cocaine and marijuana in his possession. It was the latest in a long history of arrests for the suspect, who was charged earlier that year for trying to pass fake money at a gas station. 2 years earlier, he was accused of attempted homicide. His latest case appears to be ongoing. 5. Yeza Said. On New Year's Day in 2008, a taxi driver named Yeza Said killed both his daughters, Amina and Sarah, and abandoned his cab in Irving, Texas. It would later be revealed that the girls had virtually no freedom from their abusive father, who watched their every move and planned to force them into arranged marriages once they reached adulthood. He allegedly murdered them because he felt like he was losing control over their lives and couldn't bear the thought of them having any freedom, which he allotted plenty of to his son. Said remained completely out of sight for the next 12 years while law enforcement searched high and low for him. They found no record of him fleeing to Egypt, and tips that he might be in various other places proved to be dead ends. Authorities came close to capturing Said at an apartment complex in Texas in 2017, but he fled the moment he realized they were onto him. In 2020, the FBI began surveying a home in Justin, Texas. Said's brother Yassin also lived there. Agents noticed Said's son Islam and his brother Yassin coming and going from the property. Even when Islam and Yassin weren't there, however, the shadow of a third person could be seen moving around within the home. The feds raided the house and finally apprehended Said. Islam was sentenced to 10 years in prison for aiding his father's life on the run, and Yassin received a 12-year sentence for the same charge. Said was found guilty of murdering his daughters and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. 4. Rawson Watson. Baggage handlers at London's Heathrow Airport were going about their day as usual in 2000 when they dropped an especially heavy box. An injured man spilled out of it and onto the runway. He managed to evade capture and ran off into the night. The man was later identified as Rawson Watson, a career criminal who came up with the genius idea to cram himself into an express handling box along with £1.5 million in stolen cash. His plan was to travel to Madrid as a stowaway and then sneak off the aircraft with the ill-gotten funds. After the plot foiled, he remained on the run until 2002, when he was arrested in a drunk driving accident, and his DNA turned up as a match to the yet unidentified suspect from the incident at Heathrow. Watson was imprisoned for more than 3 years for the crime. He made headlines yet again in 2013, when he was taken into custody on suspicion of trying to smuggle $30 million worth of cocaine from the Dominican Republic to Belgium. The arrest stemmed from an incident 2 years earlier, when airport security staff found the drugs in 20 different suitcases, amounting to a total weight of 1 ton. Because Watson tried to smuggle the cocaine in a plane registered in the US, he was prosecuted through the American court system. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 17 years in federal prison. 3. Israel Cortez. After receiving a report of a suspicious vehicle in 2011, police headed over to a restaurant in New Brunswick, New Jersey, where there was a car parked outside and an exterior door leading to the basement was left open. Officers who walked in on 3 suspects who were in the middle of sawing away at a copper pipe that they planned to steal. It was apparent that the burglars had already cut most of the pipes that they planned to take and were about to load the stolen metal into their vehicles. The trio fled the scene, but it didn't take long for the cops to catch up with 2 of the men. Christian Cortez was captured outside the establishment, and Richard Wilson was found near a motel about an hour later. After having no luck tracking down the 3rd suspect away from the building, the police returned to the restaurant and began to search it more thoroughly. They overheard a loud noise coming from on top of an industrial refrigerator and found Israel Cortez on top of it snoozing away. He evidently dozed off while hiding. Cortez soon joined his co-conspirators at the local jail, where they were charged with burglary, theft, and possession of burglary tools. They were accused of doing thousands of dollars worth of damage to the restaurant. 2. Henry KRAUSS. After being released from a New York State prison for a parole violation in 1992, Henry KRAUSS failed to show up for a meeting with his parole officer and very quickly became a wanted fugitive. But he was nowhere in sight. 5 years later, in 1997, highway workers in Tompkins County noticed smoke spewing from what appeared to be a brush pile in a nearby forest. They went to check it out, and when they got close, an elderly man emerged from underground and told them to go away. The parties exchanged a few unpleasant words before the workers conceded to the man's demand for them to leave. They notified authorities of the bizarre encounter. Environmental officers and a forest ranger responded to the call. Just like the highway workers, when they got close to the brush pile, a rugged old man appeared and confronted them. He quickly surrendered upon realizing he was outnumbered. The man identified himself as Henry KRAUSS. For half a decade, he had lived in an underground shelter disguised as a brush pile. It was small, measuring just 6 feet wide and 5 feet high, but it was well insulated and had a wood-burning stove. Inside, law enforcement found a logbook of his daily activities, which included entries about staying inside for days in the winter to avoid leaving tracks in the snow. KRAUSS also wrote about riding his bike to nearby Ithaca, where he stocked up on supplies and visited family and friends. Lieutenant Henry Yeichel told the New York Times that the fugitive was surprisingly clean-cut for someone who was living in the woods for so long. He was clean-shaven, bathed in a nearby stream, and brushed his teeth regularly. But he could have avoided his solitary existence in the wilderness and eventually returning to prison if he'd just gone and seen his parole officer. 1. Demecca Meade. One evening in 2022, deputies in Logan County, West Virginia responded to a call about a fight involving a gun. They spoke with a woman who accused Demecca Meade of physically assaulting her and threatening to shoot her during an argument. She claimed Meade entered her apartment and emerged moments later with a gun, while continuing to threaten the victim, who managed to get the gun out of Meade's hands and threw it toward an embankment. The gun was later retrieved from beneath Meade's couch according to a criminal complaint. A bystander reportedly caught footage of the suspect hitting the victim with the weapon. Meade was charged with a slew of crimes including brandishing a weapon, assault with a weapon during the commission of a felony, and wanton endangerment. At the scene, deputies witnessed a man later identified as Roy Austin Walker fleeing from Meade's apartment and running off into the woods. They later found him crouched in a garbage can outside a nearby market and charged him with fleeing on foot. Thanks for watching. Would you rather spot a wanted notorious fugitive sneaking in and out of your neighbor's house, or live next door to a nosy police chief? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.